Hi, everyone. This is Fiona McLeod. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I am the founding editor of Oxbeckers Investigative Environmental Journalism. I'd like to start out by picking up on a point that Ferial Hafferty raised in the session prior to this one, where she mentioned that the health reporting beat has now become critical because of COVID-19. What I would like to say is that that's probably because us environmental journalists have not been doing a good job. If we had been doing a better job, perhaps COVID-19 may not be with us, and perhaps the health beat would not be the huge beat that it is now. Anyway, as some of you probably know or may not know, COVID-19 has been linked to pangolins, the trade in pangolins. We've had other zoonotic diseases in the past, such as the SARS coronavirus and bird flu. And these are all linked to our interaction with wildlife and other animals. So Oxbeckers is a small unit which for a long time has been focusing on various environmental topics, including the illegal wildlife trade and wildlife crime. We're focusing more on it now going forward for various reasons, one of them including, excuse me, that we would like to prevent future pandemics. With us today, we've got Estacio Valoy, who works in Mozambique on many different topics, including environmental topics. He works with the Center for Investigative Journalism in Mozambique. He's going to start our chat today. Then I will give a presentation on some of the work that Oxbeckers is doing against wildlife crime. And we're hoping that Oscar and Carla will join us. If he doesn't, then I will speak about some of the work that he has been doing recently. Sorry about the frog in the throat. Anyway, I'll try to clear it while Estacio talks for a while.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me properly. There's such a different conference, the webinar from this side of Mozambique, and I'll be interacting with people in different parts of this world, mainly African investigative journalists. But as a kickoff, I will have to remind that while COVID is still going on, bad boys, in fact, they never will sleep. By saying this, as I wrote before, is that all the issues during the pandemic, I mean, from funding, effort from journalists and other different organizations, where everything was almost focused on COVID. But meanwhile, kleptocrats, looters, they've been plundering the continent in different ways, in different areas. And as Fiona did mention, COVID, this environmental issue, different disease. In the middle of it, some of the things which we could realize was that not everything was so bad. I'm talking about the article or the investigation which, or results which I'm going to present now based on the Nias National Reserve. As many of you do remember, Nias National Reserve during the years of 2013, 2015, until more or less almost 2 years ago, the level of poaching was really high. We talk about 30 30,000 elephants being poached. We'll talk about 5 elephants being killed a day. But to settle, these end up changing, of course, doing some of our contribution as environmental journalists and other organizations. And by working in Niassa National Reserve, we had to use different strategy, which we're still using today, for understanding the mechanism on and the process on how the from timber, from ivory have been smuggling either to Tanzania, to Dodoma, until Dar es Salaam, Kenya, and to the world, in the mail to China, and also going south to Cabo Delgado Harbor, Nacala, and in another case, going to Beira Harbor. But as I was saying, in terms of the Niassa National Reserve, when we looked at anti-poaching project which is going on there, in order to achieve these projects, and of course, we had to be there, also investigate and try to understand on how this process was done. In Niassa National Reserve today are different unities for different special forces, talking about the rangers from National Reserve, talk about the rangers from the game hunters, which some of them today became environmental conservation concession and no longer game hunters. But of course, also in the middle of this process, we did realize one interesting issue. While the people or the conservation journalists were all happy about this achievement by register 0 elephant poached in Niassa National Reserve, the other side was claiming about what was going on, which can also undermine what's to achieve it. I mainly talk about animal and the man conflict. Like those years where we're able to go with the timber looters or poachers, following them, and to try to understand how they poach, like example, go and live with them in their community. Ask them on how they get support, because at the end of the day, these poachers, some of you may know, were the ones which end up receiving nothing or almost nothing in terms of profits in this entire business. And how was possible to be with these poachers, example, was through some connection inside the community. By staying inside the community, that gave us an open door to approach, and sometimes being eaten with these people in their houses, being cooking with these people in the houses, join the same beer or join the same room. But each investigation has its own process. What means you have to adjust, adapt yourself according to the situation where you are. But of course, at those main aspects, be able not all to have resources on the community, but in all the levels, which somehow end up facilitating your maneuver or on how you are going to do your own investigation. Was a little bit difficult for me somehow to believe that was 0 elephant poached. Looking to the situation, the level of, the intensity on the environmental issue and the poaching in the National Reserve. So I had to go and find out about the 5 elephants which according to the first information we had, were killed by poachers. But then, recently, I was told, no, those elephants end up dying because some they were sick, some they were old. But by not believing, by coming with the checking the information which was given by the authorities or by the nearest national reserve when they said there was no poaching. So I had to go back there and see if that was true. It was no longer about having 10, 30,000, 20,000 elephants, but was exactly to confirm what the media, the environmental organizations, the government were saying. But in the middle of it, one thing leads to another, I end up realizing that one of the major problems is the fence, and that the people, if you need to come with a real anti-poaching project, example, a fence is required that side, but the fence will also not only protect the people, but also protecting the environmental life. We talk for elephant, buffaloes, and so on. But above all, this will create what I could call a bad environment for all the people. Looking to the National Reserve today, at certain point, we do know that poaching somehow have been fueling different wars in Africa. And I also had to find out if this was true in this context, because recently with the ongoing terrorist, I could call it bandit attacks in Mozambique. They call themselves Al-Shabaab. The issue of having the Niassa National Reserve with a high number of elephants and mainly being patrolled by this joint team was something which I had to find out on how they were doing. Of course, some of the secrets I'm not going to share with you here because they told me that it's a strategic plan. But how I end up going there? Yes, I was in the Niassa National Reserve looking for elephants and other things, but suddenly was necessary to go further. And one of the aspects which came up was Mekula districts before was a place where was Al-Shabaab cell, or where Al-Shabaab cells in that site. But when the attempt attack was taking over that place and that the terrorists did not succeed, for me, this ended up leading me also to go there and I try to raise this issue. As I was saying, defense is necessary. It's important to have more people protecting that area. And as we know, poaching also has been fueling different wars, not only in Mozambique. So I went with these people, but these people were not really aware about what exactly I was looking for. We ended up patrolling. We left early morning, and we've been patrolling for like 2 hours. I was with a team of 4 scouts, and the driver, of course. Now we're able to patrol a considerable area, and this area ended up being border with the province where the issue of Al-Shabaab is going on. I mean, the war. So as I was saying, this ended up leading to another process. So the other issue is on how to keep investigating this new track, which I was led when I was in the Niassa National Reserve. And looking to the current situation in Niassa, zero poaching with war, how will this be in the coming years? And myself as a journalist, how will be able to investigate in those areas? Consider that in some of the places in Mozambique, journalists are not allowed to report. And with this, because we still have a COVID, how will be able to manage myself? Yes, it's still possible like we did. Not exactly going from the place where, example, the war is going on, but starting from something which can lead you to the other topic, which of course is not separate from elephant poaching. And that this is not something new. Have been happening. But the main thing is to remember that bad boys, they don't sleep, so we cannot sleep as well. We're to try to recreate, to improve our techniques. Of course, when we are on the ground, as I was saying before, some of the techniques you don't apply, but to remain the basic ones. And I'm here just talking, I guess, with myself. I would prefer to interact more with the people in that side. So we can try to come together on this article and also the investigation which you have been doing. I think for me, that's the best way of interacting instead of only being talk about this or that piece and tell you the story behind it. And of course, I also apologize because for here where I am, seems like I'm having a two audience. Is the audience from the conference, and the other side is the audience from the motorbikes passing by, and some of the kids playing anyway. So hello, I don't know if my network is still good.
Are you trying to share your screen?
Yes, I was trying mainly to come with an specific point.
It's at the bottom there.
Yes, as I was saying, not everything is really bad in that side. We have also the issue of what's still going on there, what I could find. It's lion poaching, where the pieces or the products coming from the lion, for nails, skin, and so on, and some of the process have been exported, but we also have the other side, which is local medicine, local usage. And one of the questions which came up was, how can we manage, or how can we bring this issue of local medical products or medicine to the context of poaching, and also the smuggling of these products. For me, it was a little bit difficult because I consider everything such as poaching, but from the other side is yes, looking to our practice, mainly in Africa, we'll talk about Africa. This, it's happened, is a common practice. So how could you tell the people from the community, how could you educate them and tell them to avoid this practice, something which is a part of the culture or have been for decades and decades, century and century. Meanwhile, from the other side, it's considered poaching. I mean, this is something which I would also like to hear from you. But above all the discussion, yes, we're able to separate these two sides. Yeah, even the administrator was able to bring this issue up. One thing is the local practice. The other side is exactly the poaching issue. And this also took me back to the issue of elephants and people, because in some places where we're able to pass by in the past, even now, some of people are way about conservation and that they want to protect, but they also ask for protection. It was not really necessary a big investigation to find out it. It was mainly to look in the kind of fences in compare with what is happening in other parks, example. Talk about parks in South Africa with all those fences where the community is separated from the animal. But was also the issue of the money, how to get money so that the fence can be constructed. But meanwhile, when I was there, one of the message which was delivered during a meeting of the Mozambican government in Lixinga, Niassa province, was that no, we already constructed the fence, like was about maybe 58 meters. No, not 58 meters, I think 58 kilometers if I'm not wrong. But the message was, yes, we already started with the construction of the fence. But when I was there, I realized that was no fence at all when we are talking about conventional fence. It was one of those fences with 3 wires, which is not even enough to protect the crops or protect the people, example for the elephants. That's why I went up in that midday, not midday, in that day around 9-something p.m., where people were knocking pots and other things, and we thought, I mean, in gunfire, we thought was another attack, and that is something which happens almost every night.
So can we start wrapping it up now?
Yes, I think I've been talking too much.
When you finished, there's a question. But when you finished, there's a question.
No, I already finished. I'm waiting for question. I think it's better to be in touch with people.
Okay, so Collins and Tika says, wildlife trafficking is mainly fueled by international syndicates who get help from local syndicates in this view. If so, what safety precautions does one need to embrace before one cracks the syndicates or before one embeds with the group to go undercover? We all agree that in some instances, a story is not worth one's life.
Yes, I think answering to Collins, one of the things you have to know the environment where you are going to. Sometimes to know the people, the places can take a while, but sometimes can take like a week. Mainly this depends on the kind of connection which you have in that place. And I mean, sources with which you can interact in a daily basis before you go there. Colleagues as well. I'll give you a simple example. I end up living to Guinea-Bissau. Yes, was Guinea-Bissau. Never been there. And I was investigate on timber looting. Yes, in Kula. I was with EIA and US as a member. And one of the main things was I had a team, myself and another Chinese guy. But above having this team, I had also people on the ground, which I met them years ago in other conference. And from them, they end up leading me to different organizations. At the time, we were even able to meet the people from the government, Chinese people selling timber, were able to go a little bit inside Guinea-Bissau, but mainly because of this source which were able to recreate during that week or during those 2 weeks before leaving to Guinea-Bissau. I remember we were even able to have a meeting with the president because the timber, as Colin said, it's been done by local networks and international networks. So in Guinea-Bissau story was, yes, where people which belongs to the local network associated to local Chinese, which were already living there. And there was a big business where when the president realized, the former, of course, not the new one, when he realized that more than 2,000 containers of Nkola were about to be exported, he decided to have a meeting with us. Yeah, we told him, yes, we'll be having a meeting in 2 days' time. But a day before, the day of the meeting, when I end up getting inside the flights and we disappear because it was not our intention to meet the president. We could end up exposing this to bring or highlight the issue of risk, which Cost did mention. We had to manage the risk and see how far can we go. If we realize that the level of crime here is high and it's not worth to expose yourself or to go into it, you look to what you have and leave. If we have to continue with the investigation, you will do another day, another here. Yeah, I do understand that sometimes we go there and we want to come out with everything. But that end up undermine our investigation, of course, our life, our partner, and other people.
Thank you for answering that, Estacio. I'm going to move on now and talk a little bit about a slightly different approach to doing journalism. The earlier session was on doing journalism in the COVID-19 era. We at Oxbeckers have been working digitally and virtually for a number of years now. And we have found that it has helped us tremendously during this period. I'm going to share with you now a presentation. Oops, sorry, I need to just share my screen first. Just bear with me for a second. Let me share my screen with you. Right. So what I'm talking about is how to use new techniques for effective wildlife trafficking and conservation stories in Southern Africa and other parts of the world. Why should we be dealing with illegal wildlife trade? As I mentioned earlier, perhaps if we had done our jobs better in years previous to now, we wouldn't be dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, because of improved technology and increased internet access around the world, and because it's become a more global world, it has become easier to commit transit crimes. The illegal wildlife trade at the moment, wildlife crime, is estimated to be worth between $19 and $24 billion a year, and probably some estimates say a lot more. Conversation around this topic is growing, but unfortunately, the extent of use and exploitation of wildlife remains under-investigated. Why we should be interested? Because it not only affects the environment and biodiversity, but has huge impacts on social and economic development. And as you know, at the moment, it's become a huge health risk as well. There's no single solution to illegal wildlife trade. It's a multifaceted trade and requires a number of interventions, including legislation, advocacy, data, and storytelling, which is where we come in. And one of our main ambitions is at Oxbeckers is to make data more accessible to storytellers and to the public. Data is used by officials. It helps to disrupt, intervene, and prevent a whole lot of scenarios, including wildlife trade. It provides context, clarity, and the ideal, truth. The way the world handles information at the moment is different, as you would know, living in this virtual digital world. We know that wildlife crime is happening. We know illegal wildlife trade is happening. So our objective is to make it more accessible. By keeping this data exclusive or under wraps, it means that there's no transparency, there's no accountability, there's no understanding by the public, and there's no buy-in to what we're trying to achieve. So in 2012, 2013, we set up Oxbeckers, named after these little birds that you see on the screen here. They are very good at removing parasites, which is why we decided to name our little unit Oxbeckers. And it is Africa's first, it was at that stage, Africa's first journalistic investigative unit focusing entirely on environmental issues. We combine traditional investigative reporting techniques with data analysis and geomapping tools. The aim of these tools is to track and expose criminals and syndicates in Africa. We're currently developing very, it says my internet connection is unstable. Hopefully it's stable. We're developing the most comprehensive databases of eco-offences, and we work with media partners to tell stories and make resources available to the public. The first tool that we set up using this approach aimed at sharing, at the click of a button, statistics on rhino poaching incidents in South Africa, which at that stage were being released on a regular basis by the government. And unfortunately, since then, the government has stopped releasing those statistics on a regular basis. They do it now occasionally, but not as regularly as they were doing it then. Anyway, this tool still exists, and it tracks statistics on rhino deaths and poaching arrests now across Southern Africa. It's based mostly on original data, which is cleaned, aggregated, filtered, and presented in an easily accessible way. So our next step after that was, okay, so we've got rhino deaths and arrests taking place in connection with those poaching incidents. Okay, so we thought, well, what happens to those people after they've after they have been arrested and or the horns have been seized? And then, so we launched a new geo-mapping platform, data-driven geo-mapping platform called Rhino Poachers Court Cases. And this is an open source tool that maps court cases and convictions across Southern Africa. We get the data from courts, law enforcement agencies, and from scraping the web. And it was created and continues to function in response to a general lack of access to information in one place, particularly on rhino poaching enforcement. So you can research it yourself. If you like, you can go to all the various sources that make this information available, but it takes a lot of time. You can also launch promotion of access to information applications. Again, time, cost, not guaranteed that you'll get the information you want. Or you can go to all the different courts that would be able to hopefully give you this information. Those are now hopefully made a lot easier by the Rhino Poachers Court Cases mapping platform, which filters, is used for geomapping, storytelling, and is used by government officials, governments, NGOs, and advocacy campaigns. We then moved on in 2019 to apply that approach in other parts of the world. And the first tool that we applied that approach to is called WildEye Europe, which we launched in 2019, and then WildEye Asia, which we launched in 2020. Both are open source tools that map seizures, arrests, court cases, and convictions related to illegal wildlife trafficking in those areas. In order to do this, we use a spreadsheet, we collate data, we clean it, we put it all together, and we put it onto the platform. We then, excuse me, aggregate it and analyze it in order to tell stories. For users, it provides one place where they can obtain this information and use it for their own purposes at the click of a button. Data, data, data. Data is a whole new world, and it's actually a very exciting world for a journalist to work in. As I say, in this time of COVID, it provides you with a whole new set of resources that you can use to do your work. It also helps to hold those in power to account and helps you to tell compelling stories. This is some of the information about how we go about collating and collecting our data. As we go along, we form increasingly important relationships with other monitoring organizations who use our data and who also share their data with us. We're also working with a community of journalists and other people who are interested in this topic. I won't talk too much about how WildEye works because it has been quite a long session. but this is some of the functionality behind the tool. As I said earlier, we're working in Europe with more than 500 data points at the moment, and in Asia with more than 600 data points. The tool enables you, here's a view of it, it enables you to search for whatever topics you want. You can get alerts on particular topics and cases. You can also filter information. So it has a whole lot of functionality that we would encourage journalists to use. Although at the moment, these two WildEye tools are based in other parts of the world, they provide information for what's happening here in Southern Africa and in other parts of Africa and in other parts of the world. How can you, as a journalist, use WildEye? You can track specific individuals, syndicates, patterns, trends, cases. You can start comparing by using the search filter. You can start comparing whether law enforcement takes place more in one part of the world than the other, whether there's preference for smugglers. The smugglers, you can check up on smuggling routes. You can also compare seizures and arrests to convictions in particular cases. You can use these to build new stories. You can also get our data sets, which we liberate via our Get the Data section, and you can reach out to us to suggest stories. I would like to just share a few quick examples of some of the collaborations that we have done with journalists with these tools in the past year. In this case, a Chinese journalist called Poaching collected and analyzed court case data, to see what kind of sentences pangolin smugglers and offenders in China were receiving. Her conclusion after analyzing her data, which was 2019 and 2020, unfortunately, was that pangolin offenders are getting treated lightly, and that this is unlikely to deter illegal trade. And as I mentioned earlier, pangolins have been connected to the COVID-19 pandemic, so that's unfortunate. We were hoping that the Chinese government and the Chinese courts would be clamping down on pangolin trade post-COVID-19. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Another couple of investigations include using data and contacts and advertisements scraped from the web that we collated, put together to expose the illegal market for reptiles in Europe in the cyberspace. Another one came from a question that was raised as a result of the data work that we were doing in Western Europe. People said, well, it appears that there's a lot more going on in terms of illegal trade and court cases in Western Europe than there is in Eastern Europe. So a Romanian journalist called Marius Day started collecting data on court cases in Eastern Europe, and then produced a story saying that it's rife, wildlife trafficking is rife in Eastern Europe, but that it largely goes unnoticed and unpunished. That was a 3 to 6 month investigation. One of the more recent ones was done by Indonesian journalist Reza Pratama and data wrangler Wan Zura, who worked together to collect data from court cases in Indonesia to explore whether a change in law will work in other trafficking cases. This was a very, very good investigation where a data wrangler or a data journalist and a traditional journalist joined forces to produce one of the best pieces of data journalism I've seen in many years. Going forward, we want to bring some of our work back home. We're planning to bring WildEye and to apply some of its methods to what is largely a feeder region for global wildlife crime. And the countries that we want to concentrate on in the next year or two include South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Malawi, and Zambia. We want to do some transnational collaborative journalism projects, combining the work of data journalists and investigative journalists. Please contact us if you're interested. It's the kind of approach that we will use is the one that I've discussed in the journalistic investigations in the course of this presentation. And thank you very much. There are some of our contact details and some of our supporters. Okay, there we go. Phew. All right. I'm going to just talk very briefly, if you will bear with me, about what Oscar was going to talk about, because unfortunately, he has not been able to join us. Oscar has done some brilliant work. He spoke at AIJC 2019 about the work that he's been doing into donkey skin trade, which for those who don't know, involves, in a few sentences, the killing and trafficking of donkeys, either complete or just their skins, mainly to China and other places in Asia, for a product called Ijao, which is a sort of donkey hide glue that is marketed as having medicinal qualities. Oscar has been working for years on this topic, and this year he came across the fact that donkey smuggling syndicates are using pipelines for ivory pangolins and other illicit contraband, particularly during the COVID-19 period, to smuggle donkeys, steal them and smuggle them from Zimbabwe into Botswana, where there is a very large abattoir run by a Chinese company. The abattoir is called Poaching abattoir. It was closed down by the Botswana government in 2017 and then opened again in 2018. And what Oscar investigated earlier this year was that donkeys were being stolen in this place called Plumtree in Zimbabwe, which he describes as a heartlands of a vast cross-border crime enterprise that makes millions from running ivory, illegal immigrants, contraband cigarettes, marijuana, and of late, stolen donkeys in and out of Botswana. They go via a border post called Ramokwebana, and they are smuggled into Francistown, home to Poaching abattoir, which is now processing 100 or more donkeys per day. The meat is mostly sold locally, and then the skins are sent over to China. So he did a huge investigation on this topic, and I'm very sad that he is unable to come and talk about it himself, because if anybody wants to know about the donkey trade in Southern Africa and other parts of Africa, because he's investigated this in Central Africa and in East Africa. Oscar Nkala is the guy to talk to. All right, so unfortunately he couldn't be with us. We're trying to support him. Oscar has two problems. One, the internet in Zimbabwe seems to be extremely unreliable. We thought it was only going to be for the time of the elections, but it seems to continue. And then secondly, it appears that the authorities are trying to evict his family from their family farm near Bulawayo. So he's got big problems on his hands. I asked him if that had anything to do with the work that he's been doing, and he said, no, he doesn't think so. But anyway, we're monitoring the situation with Oscar, and if need be, we will reach out to people who can assist him. All right, so let's see if there are any questions that we need to answer. No questions and answers. We have a comment from people saying the tools are great. Thanks for sharing. If anybody wants to ask any questions, please do so now, because we don't have a lot of time left. There were some answering questions. I see that Estasia has answered some questions. Okay.
Yes, I did answer, but I was waiting for you to,
go ahead.
To highlight it, yes. So,
go ahead.
No, I was exactly waiting for you so you could also help me or contribute for this in these questions.
Okay. What do you suggest for looking for the top players, the people at the top of the food chain in wildlife crime? Well, I mean, anonymous attendee. Look at the data, look at the court cases, look at where the law enforcement agencies are concentrating their efforts. Speak to them. They're not easy to find, those big guys, you know, they're really not. And as Estasia mentioned earlier, often the intervention is on the small people, the poachers, you know, the little guys. It's not easy to catch the people who are sponsoring them, who are making them do what they do, but it can be done. So research, speak to law enforcement, look at our data sharing tools, and reach out to us if we can help you. Estasia, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think that's all. Thank you. I can see here was also another question on how journalists look to collaborate across borders.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, if we can invest more resources, more time, and more money in these projects, we're not going to have a problem with collaboration amongst journalists across borders. I mean, it makes sense for us to collaborate across borders because that's where the crime takes place. That's where the operations, the traffickers, that's how they're working. I mean, if you looked at Oscar's story, you know, it's about trafficking of lots of different commodities and contraband across borders. It's happening all the time. If we want to succeed as journalists, that's how we have to operate. There's a story about whether somebody ever offered you a bribe.
Oh, yes, that was from college.
Estasia?
Yes, in fact, they did try several times, but at the end realized that was not possible. Do you remember when people comes to you and say, yeah, today's Friday, so maybe you should take this money so you can enjoy yourself. Then you look at him and say, are you trying to bribe me? And he said, no, I'm not trying to bribe you. I'm looking to the weekend so you can enjoy yourself. So, I mean, this kind of thing did happen several times. So from there, you hit them back and they realize that it is not possible to try to come with a real bribe, because that small amount of money and the way how the people end up coming to you, no, let's go there for the weekend, that's a bribe. So they did try several times. If you can't have a good weekend and a good lunch, just stay home. Simple. Then you end up avoiding.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the ideal would be to be able to film is to record the person offering you the bribe, right?
Yeah.
Wildlife Trafficking need collaboration and are not a one-man show. Completely agree, Collins. We look forward to working with you in the future. Great stuff. All right, guys. Well, please use WildEye, use our other tools, and reach out to us if we can be of any assistance, or if you'd like to work with us. And thank you for joining us today. And Estacio, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much to all of you and for being with us. See you.
See you at in the flesh soon, hopefully.